Hello, everyone. For the next episode of Jamdani Weaves, I have a very interesting guest with me, former banker turned Jamdani entrepreneur, Silmat Chisti, all the way from Dhaka. Hi, Silmat. Welcome.
Hi, Shweta. Hi, everyone. Thank you for
So,
having me here.
I have to begin absolutely by complimenting you on this beautiful revival design Jamdani. I think this is from the Jamdani festival, isn't
This is from the
it?
Jamdani festival. It's the Angulotta motif, and I actually brought the book to show you from the exhibition. It's this saree right here. And
Beautiful.
the exhibition happened, and then we sort of went into lockdown for the last 2 years. And this is my absolute favorite Jamdani, and I've been looking for a place and wanting to wear it. And I thought, why not today, in the midst of your Jamdani week, and we show it to the Jamdani lovers, and perhaps
Absolutely love it. So, Silmat, what we're going to talk about today is a very different kind of conversation from the other conversations I've been having about the textile so far. And today we're going to talk about Jamdani as a business case. And you've been a banker, you've been an MBA, you've worked on Wall Street, and you've now come back and you've been looking at SME financing in Bangladesh for a while. So tell us a little bit, quick snapshot into your corporate career.
Well, I was as far removed from the craft sector as one can possibly be. Growing up in Bangladesh in the 70s, you love Jamdani, and that Jamdani is yours, sort of fills you with pride and glee. And we were in the very early stages of nationalism and Bangladesh brand building, etc. But apart from that, I was very far removed from Jamdanis. I went through the traditional route of college in the US, joined Wall Street, MBA, went back to Wall Street, moved with my job on Wall Street to work in Hong Kong, Bangladesh, etc. And but now it's been a little longer, and 11 years ago, I quit banking and I started working on something a little bit more comprehensive, financing the SME sector, and almost stumbled upon the Jamdani weavers and craft overall textile in Tangail or Shirajganj or wherever, and fell in love. Really, I can't find any other way of expressing this. Fell in love with the sector, gave up all things related to anything else that I was doing, and immersed myself in Jamdanis and fabric, and sort of translated into forming or launching our own brand called Nobu, where we work mostly with weavers, do a little bit of designing for ourselves, but work with weavers on really taking what we already have, what the weavers already do, to the next level of being globally competent. Literally, when we started working with the weavers, we focused not on just the design aspect, but also the entire value chain. And once you get into the value chain, you realize, okay, there's a market to be created, and is it Saks Fifth Avenue? Is it going back to the glory days of launching to the couture houses of France and England, etc.? Or do you go to India? Because India rising is the best thing for us. One aspect is is creation of the market, sizing of the market, and is it fashion industry is $1 trillion, so and the industry is going 5 to 6%. You can tap into that. I don't think anyone wants to buy off the rack anymore. People want to buy fabric, especially the millennials and the generation after them. They want to buy things with a story, something that has a tale to tell. And Jamdani weavers or any of the handloom in this whole region tells a lot of stories of not just the weavers, but the whole business, the villages, everybody around it, and we don't market ourselves well, but if we do, this is wonderful fabric, and it's sustainable. There's hardly any power wasted on weaving of Jamdani. So things like that, and then technology evens the playing field, and so all of that combined, we thought that this is the time for Jamdani, and let's do our bit for taking it to the next level.
Good. Interesting that you say this, because one of the conversations that I had earlier in this week, for example, with Dr. Sonia Ashmore, also, brought to light the fact that there were all of these different types of Jamdanis depending on who they were catering to. So, for example, you had these, the flowered Jamdanis, or the more elaborate ones that we were talking about, perhaps because of the way a sari is structured with the borders and the pallu, etc., is not something that would function as yardage. But there's absolutely no reason why it couldn't be yardage in the form of, say, even upholstery if it needed to be. Because if you had to expand the market to include more players into it, then you have to also be able to go beyond looking at it through the narrow lens of the
Yes, and this is
romanticization
what
of
we
the sari.
find that when we did the exhibition, we started working with the weavers. Jamdani exhibition of 2019 was a great boost for them, because
Sure.
sometimes you just need a little bit of hand holding, and that's what
Absolutely.
Crafts Council or at Steps, this is what we're trying to do.
So what is, I wanted to get a sense of more a snapshot of the picture in terms of how it's organized right now.
Well, it's very informal.
It's
very informal, and you've got a few villages that specialize in Jamdanis, and this is interesting because there's a lot of informal, unpaid for labor that women put into the sector. So everything at the pre-weaving and are done by women, and it's quite arduous. It's hard work, but they're not as well recognized as the ultimate master weaver who'll sit at the loom and with his assistant and weave it. So so you will find that the entire family of a weaver is in one form or fashion engaged in this trade. The market size, I don't know. I don't have a sense of. I can give you one bit of statistics. I think we've got the low end Jamdanis, and there's a hut. Hut as in weekly sale, almost like a you go in and there's a big room, and all the weavers come in and they'll sell their very, very low end like stuff, and the hut is every week on Friday in the morning for a couple of hours, and the trading volume size is about 1 crore. So it's not unsubstantial, but there's a huge amount of these low-end Jamdanis that also will go to India, which again isn't accounted for. And
yeah, but I mean, I think what I want to understand from you right now is what are the kind of financing models that currently exist for Jamdani weavers? I mean,
well, you have the master weavers who then go on to have in their homes anywhere between 15 to 20 looms, and then they engage junior weavers who are perhaps not as financially solvent as them to do the work for them. And one part would be the mid-range weaves, the other part would be the specialized weaves, etc. And so the financing is controlled by the master weavers, who are called the dadons, and these dadons will finance you for the size. So they'll give you an advance, they'll come to your homes, or they'll give you a loom and you work for them. And it's quite informal. And the dadons will charge you exorbitant rates, so anywhere between 100 to 300% interest rates. And then supposedly the sector has access to bank financing, but it's a chicken and egg case. Anyone who's taken money hasn't returned it properly. So the banks are wary, the SMEs are wary. You go to the MFIs, they will lend, but it's hard for the weavers to come out of this cycle of borrowing at exorbitant rates and then sort of not repaying the bank loan.
Right. How do you transition to a more formal borrowing
so I
system?
think even the master weaver himself will not have incorporated a company, right?
Right.
So then how do you access the government gave a lot of these pronodonas and grants during COVID. Did it trickle down to the master weavers or to the junior weavers? Unlikely, because when you go to the bank, they'll ask you for paperwork, they'll ask you for documentation, they'll ask you for your inventory, your production plan, and your working financing plan, and you don't have any of that documented. It's all in your head. The other sad part of it is, if you speak to the weavers, a lot of the really good weavers are illiterate.
Right.
really, to put it frankly. So how do you then, even the master weavers, and they move crores of, hundreds of crores of money, of taka, but really no formal education. So that ends up being a challenge when you're trying to bring them back to the, bring them out of the informal financing into the formal sphere. But it can be done. I think Bangladesh has done a
I'm
fantastic
sure there
job
could be innovative financing solutions.
financing, but I don't know if bank loan is the only answer. We are working with our parent organization to look into impact funds. There are funds globally that are not as stringent about deadlines and payment plans, etc., have a longer horizon. So how do you tap into these impact funds? Because sustainable Jamdani fabric has a great story to tell, but how do you tap into impact? When you think about Bangladesh, you think about financing cows and financing fishes. Jamdani is this anomaly, really. It's this very, very high-end fabric in a country that specializes in making garments for H&M.
Right.
Good and bad. We are lucky to have H&M, right? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But then how do you also brand yourself as the country that makes Jamdani? Or how
Right.
do you brand Jamdani as part of the SME sector? But fish financing is one thing, and then financing the Jamdani weavers is a whole different game. And is there a role model somewhere else that does it better than we can do? Because the fishery tale does not translate, or that lesson does not translate well to Jamdani.
But if you draw a fishery parallel, for example, I think the one thing that stands out for me is the fact that somewhere, the tangible existence of a plan or an infrastructure often makes a huge difference in order to be able to even make a business case for funding, right? So what kind of role or what kind of
But
infrastructure
also we have to think
support would
about
be needed?
not just giving money to a weaver, because you can also find other ways of helping. You can have a yarn bank. One of the things that weavers struggle with is access to good yarn. So somehow find a way to give everyone access to good yarn, and not every sari has to be lax. You can
Right.
use that yarn, and South India does it very well. You can use that yarn and weave simple saris, but get the consumer or fabric or upholsteries or whatever, but use the best yarn that's out there, and remind weavers of the booties and the designs that some have lost, and institutionalize the craft without losing the magic and the creative touch. Education, or technology. When I tell a weaver, send me a picture, he'll send you the worst possible picture in the world, because he doesn't have access to technology.
Access
So
to a good phone, yeah.
I always dream of a center where you go in, or giving them tabs, and they put pictures, and finding a technology platform where it's all there, or having not just a yarn bank, having a design bank,
Mm-hmm.
or investing in design. Or much as we romanticize Jamdani, if you go and see the weavers at work, or you see the pre-weaving stages, it's a hard work, it's back-breaking work. Is there a way to make that certain tasks of the weaving simpler without losing the handloom touch? And and it shouldn't come from me, it shouldn't come from a banker, it should come from a craft practitioner, it should come from one of the weavers, right? But
So in other words,
to
what you're saying is that folks who are working in the space, and perhaps this is a refrain I've been hearing from India a lot, to say that there isn't enough design intervention, or there aren't enough people who are actually going and telling the weavers how to do it differently or how to do it better. And so perhaps some of that institutional support, I mean, quite apart from, institutional support in terms of modernizing techniques or modernizing motifs, that part of intervention, right? But the other part of intervention also could be to look at issues like healthcare, to look at issues of how to make the system a bit more user friendly, how to look at the system such that a lot of the unrecognized work gets captured, and
yeah,
and each of the people in the value chain are then appropriately remunerated for the role that they are playing in bringing out the finished product.
well, I don't think we realize what not a gold mine, but what a treasure this is. And I told you this before that, sometimes I wake up middle of the night, I think, oh my God, all of this will go. And, when COVID cases rose, I worried that, what if some of these weavers go? And we don't know much about their healthcare. We don't know how they'll fare once before this COVID pandemic ends. And not even that, I don't think we realize what a treasure this whole Jamdani sector is for the country, for the world. And I don't think we treasure these people enough. Perhaps in the last 10, 15 years, and Arong has played a fabulous role. There are other houses that have played some role, but for the most part, they've been left to their devices, and it's really the individual businessmen or the individual weavers who've kept the trade alive, so that we can sit here now and talk about how my Ivy League education will help them. Not really thanking them that this is not dead and this is not revival. This is just taking their trade and making it even bigger.
I mean, do you know of any institutional efforts to look at perhaps insurance, medical insurance,
well,
life
the
insurance?
Crafts Council, National Crafts Council does talk about education for their children because that's an issue. You have to learn the trade at a young age, but in parallel, you must also have formal education. So there is some effort that goes into that. Insurance, I don't know. Healthcare, the region is quite rich because it's so close to Dhaka. The land itself has become very expensive, and more than the craft, the landowners are well off because you sell a plot of land and you can eat for 5 years, sort of thing. So they're not in abject poverty, but is there formal governmental or institutional support to pamper them as much as we should? Perhaps no. You and I were talking earlier. Are there lessons to be learned from a Vietnam or a Thailand or an India? Yes, absolutely. I think we can do much better for our craftsmen, and not just Jamdani, but just all of them.
Talk about a good parallel.
Thailand has done
sort of
fantastic job of, and I think the king's patronage in the 80s and the 90s helped a lot. Village after village, they patronized and they promoted, and they were given all sorts of benefits from housing to education to training, and not just training in terms of your craft, but also how do you brand yourself, how do you market yourself, creating markets. And in Bangkok, if you go to Bangkok, you have these like huge craft markets, where the global tourists will go in and buy their silks, but you also go to the villages in Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, and you can see the government's patronage and support there. And when everything else around you is taken care of, you can focus on your craft. Do you create big centers with looms and the weavers come in and work, and does that make it so uniform that you lose individual magic and touch? I don't know. If you're a weaver who's always worked with 60 count cotton yarn, you don't know any better. You don't know that you can weave with 300 till a drake comes along, or a steps comes along, or a Jamdani exhibition happens where you're telling a group of 20 weavers that no, you can. And one and all, they said, we'll try it, but take care of our monthly needs.
So currently, we're all hearing about all these innovative efforts in terms of the muslin revivals, or reviving some of the old motifs, and people are talking about how some of whether it's the Crafts Council or whether it's individual organizations that are doing the revival efforts, they're spending a year and a half to revive an entire old sari. So how does the financial model work in situations like that? Are the weavers being paid monthly wages? Are they being paid per sari?
Again, there's the concept of master weavers, and then it really depends on the individual houses that will ask the weavers to make the saris, right? So Arong has a very specific model that works for them because they make high-end and low-end Jamdanis in bulk. So the formula that works for them will not work for the smaller houses like us. So when the weavers come, and we consciously did that, we launched not that long ago, and we started a project called Nobu Shaku, which was basically launched to help the weavers during COVID. Because a lot of their very high-end inventory got stuck. And because we had a platform of buyers who were interested or who we could tap into, we started promoting their stuck-up inventories. And within first 3 months, we sold like 25 very high-end Jamdanis, 15 lakhs worth. And even the consumers weren't so keen, but we then started offering an installment plan where you come in, you book a saree, you pay Nabu in 5 installments or 6 installments, whatever. And then the day you book the saree, pay your first installment, we pay the weavers. And we don't profit from these sarees. We will charge, a few thousand as expenses, because I have a team that supports all of this, so we need to be able to give them. But the entire, so if a saree is a lakh, because these high-end exhibition sarees are 1 lakh upwards, we will pay, let's say it's 1 lakhs, we will mark it up to 1 lakh 10, 1 lakh 5, whatever. We'll keep 5 as expenses, and the rest the weaver will get, because I don't think this is the time to profit off the weavers. This is their hard work. But then the master weaver will also pay the Jamdanis, and you will never be able to get out of them how much they pay the junior weavers. There's always some formula, they'll say this, that, etc., but it never works out, and every day is a different story. So I personally don't know how the math works. But
what is the minimum wage?
What's the minimum wage? Well, a garments worker in Bangladesh is paid roughly between 10 to 15,000 taka, aside from the perks. So that would sort of be the minimum anyone would be willing to work for, or household help would be about the same, 15,000 starting salary, and then they go upwards of 20, 25, 30. So for the weavers, I don't think it's so much, they start off at the monthly rate, and then depends on the number of sarees they weave, etc.
So, I mean, I want to talk a little bit as a concluding note also on policy support, because, I mean, of course, we all know that Bangladesh declared Jamdani as a GI in 2016, but I mean, that's only the optics of it, really, if you think about it.
And World Craft Council, was kind enough to grant Sonaga as a heritage city. That all of that helps, but from a policy perspective, I think subsidies, they don't file taxes, right? So you would have to literally go and give them money for them to benefit from anything, or weaving centers, or access to yarn. Training. Lots of SME trainings happen. Give them, even simple things like packaging. When they come, they'll bring in the shabbiest, tackiest of plastic bags. When we send to you, Shweta, we deliver in a lovely, novel bag, and that's all it takes from going from the weaver to the next level of branding. So the government does have Jamdani centers, but probably we could do more in terms of international marketing, international branding, and I know for a fact that we're trying through the GMEA and other trade bodies. But I think you probably need more specialized people to be able to continuously brand Jamdani, because again, it's unlike anything else we have in this country.
You almost make it sound like, I think the closest parallel I can think of is how, say, UN organizations do it very, very well. When they have a project that they want to do, they have a brand ambassador. I think Bangladesh certainly needs a brand ambassador who actually takes the Jamdani story forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Iman is the brand ambassador for CARE, and CARE has an Indigo project. So we discovered Indigo without any of the stigma, and there's a wonderful Living Blue project that they have. And so when Iman wore an Indigo dress, that made the headlines. And Jamdani, absolutely, this is actually a great point you raise. We need a Angelina Jolie. She wore a katha from Orono when she came here, and you need that.
Yeah.
We discount the role of such people in branding
But on that note, thank you very much, Silmat. This was a very
No, thank you so
interesting,
much for having us. And
interesting conversation. And I do hope at the end of this week that if anything, I will have facilitated A, some conversations, and B, got rid of some of the cobwebs around the information. And, people will start being a little bit more discerning about Jamdanis. Thank you so much.
thank
Thanks
you.
very
Thanks
much.
for having me.